Welcome to Adewale Adeniji, Nation, Heritage and Self. On this channel, we discuss national issues, Nigeria and Africa-centric, our heritage and culture, and of course, ourselves. How to make ourselves better in our personal and professional lives. Please go through our channel to watch our videos, and don't forget to like them and subscribe to this channel. If you click on the bell button beside the subscribe icon, you will get notifications each time we post a video. Enjoy today's video.
Hello there. Welcome to episode 7 of our series on emotional intelligence. In episode 6, you remember that we explored how the 4 principles of emotional intelligence can be developed, what they mean to us individually, and how they impact our relationship with other people. Now that you understand the fundamentals of emotional intelligence and that you have taken the emotional intelligence test I recommended in episode 5, you will be wondering, I'm sure, what all this you have learned can help with your emotions. Well, stay tuned. That is the essence of this episode. Although I need to warn that this episode will be fairly longer than our previous episodes in this series, because we do not want to break it into 2 or more parts, being very, very important and of the essence of this series. In this episode 7, I will show you how to regulate your emotions and thereby build your emotional intelligence. As an incentive, I need also to let you know that emotional intelligence can pay you big dividends. Oh yes, you heard me. But you will need the right kind of investment to make this happen. If you follow my metaphor, what might this investment be? You may ask yourself. Now, you have to be systematic, you have to be deliberate, and you have to be consistent in regulating your emotions. So, are you prepared for this bumper episode? I know I'm excited. Okay, let's begin. Now, to control or regulate your emotion, you must learn to control your feelings. Feelings becomes emotions. Emotion is what you feel after an external stimuli is applied to your system. How can you learn to control your feelings? By being self-aware. To be self-aware means you recognize your emotions and their effects, and you can track. That's very important. You can track the moment when an external stimuli would lead to a particular emotion. Now, I agree that this takes a lot of practice, which is why at the beginning I had said to you that consistency is one of the things that you would need. Now, to help you accept your emotions, I would like to suggest this quadruple technique of acceptance. Quadruple technique of acceptance. There are 4 steps you need to take to get to a state where you accept your emotions. And these steps are the step of awareness, of identification, of consciousness, and of deliberation. Awareness. You have to become acquainted with the details of the emotion you are feeling. You need to be specific about what it is you are experiencing. Is it anger? You cannot afford to confuse what you are feeling. Otherwise, you would miss how to deal with it. And we have systems that can help you with this if you visit our website. Identification. Once you become aware of the emotion you are dealing with, you then need to identify the source or the trigger of that emotion. Remember that in episode 1, I had explained that emotions are reaction to external stimuli. So, you need to identify that stimuli. How do you do this? You need to develop your mind to reflect within yourself what may have caused the emotion you are feeling per time. Let me repeat that one. You need to develop your mind to reflect within yourself what may have caused the emotion you are feeling at that time. Maybe anger, maybe sadness. Was it the way you were spoken to? Could it be because you had some irritation with the source of the external stimuli? And so on and so forth. The third step is consciousness. At this stage of consciousness, you now need to link the trigger and the emotion you have become aware of. You link them together. And you have to do this deliberately, that is, consciously. It is only after you have done this linking that you can now begin the process of knowing how to deal with any particular emotion. If you miss this linking process, then the solution you find for yourself will be out of sync. Now, before I explain the last of the 4 steps to accepting your emotion, please note, dear friend, that for the first 3 steps I just discussed with you, you will need to be brutally honest with yourself. What do I mean by that? You need to be truthful to yourself, no matter how awkward or bad you think it will come out. Can you do that? You should be able to do that, because doing otherwise would defeat the purpose of learning how to master, how to regulate your emotions. So let's discuss the fourth step quickly. This is deliberation, and this is the practice stage. Very important for me as a practitioner. And this is how you do it. It is by breathing with deep, slow breaths. Deep, slow breaths. You breathe in that emotion you are trying to regulate, and you breathe out the emotion you want to use to replace it. Now, I will discuss this in some fair details in a few moments from now in this episode. For now, all I want you to know is that this practice step involves breathing exercises. Okay, let's move on. So once you master this quadruple technique of acceptance, you should be able to accept your emotions, whatever those emotions may be. At this point, let me quickly remind you that in episode 1, I'd asked you to suspend judgment whether you believe your emotions are good or bad. Now, one of the reasons why I've said so, and why in our practice we do not subscribe to categorization of emotions into bad or good, is because once you see something as bad, it's natural, isn't it, that you want to do all you can to avoid that thing completely. Now, we respectfully believe that this is a wrong approach. Why? Because doing this would limit your ability to work deliberately and consistently to change that emotion. But if you see all emotions as part of you that you can leverage, it becomes easier a task to begin to learn how to regulate those emotions. Trust me. Now, moving on. Now that you have learned to accept your emotions, you can begin the process of mastering them, or regulating them, or managing them, whichever expression appeals to you. So there are 5 steps I would like to discuss that will help you in doing just that. The first step is perspective. You have to put yourself in 2 perspectives, 2 viewpoints, yourself and that of the other person. Let me explain. You need to put yourself in your own shoes. Why you feel the way you feel. What are the underlying reasons why you reacted the way you reacted? How does reacting in that way affect you? Also, what happens to you moments after you had exhibited that emotion. Did it make you feel good or better? Or did it make you feel disappointed with yourself or with your circumstance? You need to do this to know the effect that emotion has on yourself. You need to understand it and see if you can refine that emotion, the way we responded, the way we ought to respond in future to that particular external stimuli that led to the emotion in the first place. After you have done that for yourself, then you need to sit in the perspective of the other person in that social interaction. What do I mean by that? You need to put yourself in the shoes of that person. What effect did that emotion display have on that person? If you were that other person, what effect would that emotion have had on you? If you are the receiving end of that emotion, would you think that the way the emotion was exhibited or displayed, did it achieve with you as the other person now what the person who exhibited the emotion sought it to? Do you think maybe you on the receiving end now may have misinterpreted the stimuli you sent to the other person, or maybe you could have done it better such that perhaps he would not have reacted the way he did? Or maybe that other person to whom you had sent that external stimuli meant no harm to you in the first place. Why did you now have to react to him or give him that impulse, that stimuli that set him off? My friends, the way we react in every situation is based on neural pathways in our brains. And neural pathways are formed from our past experiences. What we had lived before, what we had experienced before, will have solidified in our mind by neural pathways that when this external stimuli happens, this is what you do, this is the way you react. Now, the second step is what is called the opposition thinking technique. Opposition thinking technique. Now, a few moments ago, when I was explaining the quadruple technique of acceptance of your emotions, I had mentioned breathing exercises under deliberation. Now, this is the opposition thinking technique of regulating your emotion. Now is the time to explain how it works. Anytime an emotion wells up in you, such as, for example, anger, after you have identified the source or the trigger that led to that emotion, you should then begin to think the exact opposite of that emotion. That is the technique. Still using the example of anger, those opposite emotions to anger should not be what you are thinking using this technique. For sadness, it should be the opposite of the emotion of sadness you are thinking using this technique. So think of the exact opposite of that emotion. And as you are doing that, to help you switch, you should also think of things that make you happy, like a happy place, a nice song, or thoughts of someone or something that you love. Now, this is the key. Anything that will make you forget what triggered that emotion that you have identified is important. And whatever that thing is, or those things are, should dominate, in capital letters, dominate your thoughts throughout the opposite thinking exercise. you have to be persistent. You have to keep at it. If you keep at it, staying in that opposition thinking mold in your mind, you will begin to notice a shift. It might just be a little shift at first, but if you keep to it, you will notice a shift. And how would you notice that shift? You will discover that your breathing begins to even out. You will begin to feel at ease. You will begin to feel at peace. I encourage you to make these nice thoughts your reality as you begin to feel better. It's not that the moment you start feeling better, you get up. No. You keep at it. You let it envelop you. Let it overwhelm you, as it were. That is the way it will work. And the great thing, what I love the most about this technique is this. You can absolutely use it anywhere, at any time. It might be in your house. It might be while you're at work. It might even be while you are commuting between work or events. It is so, and the next person to you, if you are in the public transport, for example, need not know what you're doing, will not know what you're doing, even if it's at home, even if it's at work. But before I leave this point, in my therapy sessions with people on emotions, I have often been put on the spot with this particular question. Something like, so sir, how am I even sure that the emotion I have identified, as you have taught me, is the real one I need to be conscious of and I need to deal with? Well, I have a system developed just for that. So if you are feeling or asking yourself that, feeling that or asking yourself that question, now listen to this. Expand the vocabulary of your emotions. What do I mean by this? Learn all the synonyms of the emotions you need to regulate. For example, if the emotion you need to regulate is sadness, the state of being sad or reacting in a sad manner, if you look for the synonyms of sad in any standard dictionary, you should get words like grumpy, irritated, heartbroken, melancholic, pessimistic, bitter, and words like that. Now, once you identify the synonyms of the emotion you are feeling, you can now put this in a journal. Now, I will discuss this issue of a journal with you later in this episode as the fifth step I'm recommending to you, so I won't spend much time on it now. Now, when you have all these words that are close in meaning to the emotion you are trying to regulate, the context in which the emotion had arisen, which you are trying to regulate, will now pinpoint the exact word or the exact emotion to attack, to treat, to regulate. So, when the context tells you this is the particular emotion out of those synonyms, then you would not miss the emotion you need to work at. That emotion at that moment, described or embedded in the context, is the emotion you need to work on. Now, the third step, learn to say no. Now, in our day-to-day interactions, a lot of stress is heaped on us that leads us down the path gradually of emotional meltdown. And it creeps on you gradually. It starts at times innocuously. Maybe in the morning you are trying to get children ready for school and things just go out of hands. Those of you who are parents of young children, you identify with what I just said. And you begin to feel irritable, if not irritated at that stage. Then you get in maybe public transport or your vehicle going to work, or you're on a train going to work, and something just happens that piles on the pressure. You get to work, you had already laid out your events for the day, you have your calendar for the day, and something just comes and upturns the cart, and you become gradually this builds up tension. Now, what I have discovered is that learning to say no from time to time helps you keep a balance, particularly if you are in the habit of saying yes to almost everything and everybody. Oh, you don't want this person to be offended at you, and you are currying the favor of this one, or you want this person to hold you in high esteem. So the things you should ordinarily say no to, you kept saying yes. But learning to say no will keep you in a balance. How does this work? Now, each time you are forced to say yes, when really you are not willing to say yes, resentment begins to build up in you gradually, and it will ultimately trigger emotions that will negatively impact your relationships. Now, how will you find this a lot easier to do? You find it a lot easier to do when you realize, my dear friend, that the only obligation you have is to take care of your mental health, because nobody else will do that for you. It is your responsibility. So when you realize that is in your hand, then you now understand the need where you can be firm in your saying no. Now, I know it's difficult to say no, you really don't want to offend that person. So I have a way out for you. There's an easy way to say no. Anything you get asked to do and you really don't want to do, give yourself some breathing space by replying along lines like this. Could you give me time to think this over? That is not offensive, is it? Or you could say, please, I need some time to check my schedule if I could fit in what you just requested of me. Now, this buys you time to soften the blow to the person you are going to say no to. Because by asking for time, any reasonable person who had asked anything of you will begin to think that, okay, maybe this fellow have other things lined up, or there are other things equally important to him or her as I have requested of him or her. So by the time you now say no, that person's mind will already be on the path of the possibility. It could be a yes, it could be a no. Maybe when he checks his calendar, he discovered that he's fully booked, or he already had prior commitments, and so on and so forth. So there is a very easy, non-offensive way, my friend, of saying no. Now, learning to say no also builds up your resilience. It keeps you with the ability to take firm decisions from time to time to control your emotions. The fourth step I would like to discuss with you is the step we call persistence. Now, I need to lay some foundation for you to understand this step. The human brain is a storehouse of emotions through what is called the neural pathways. Now, the simple meaning of these neural pathways, these are the way or the ways our brain remembers what we had lived through before, what we had experienced in the past. And this is what helps us to form instantaneous reaction if a similar thing occurs again. Now, this accounts for our reaction to most stimuli. The brain will have been wired over time that to this external stimuli, this is what it means, and this is how you deal with it. It is already settled. That is the way the brain will react to any external stimuli for which it has formed a neural pathway. And this becomes, as it were, your default setting, my default setting. This is why most of these emotions are subconscious. Except you learn to deal with them as we are trying to do in this episode, you will find that you had reacted before you had an opportunity to get a grip on the situation, particularly of our base emotions of fear and of anger. Therefore, base neural wirings that produce these emotions I just mentioned, such as fear and anger, took millennia to form. Oh, trust me honestly, it did not begin with your own unique wiring. You got these base emotions passed down to you by genes from generation to generation. So what does this mean for our understanding today? To begin to react differently from the way you have been wired to automatically react will involve persistent work on your part. That is my point. It had taken a long time to form. Believe me honestly, it will take equally long time to rewrite. A research by the Health Behaviour Research Centre of the University College London, published in July 2009, says that it takes between 18 and 254 days, 18 and 254 days for new habits to be permanently formed, depending on the individual involved. Wow. That long? You may want to ask. Oh yes. Even though the human brain is always improving and improvising, it is harder for the brain to let go of old neural pathways and what had become settled for the brain. It takes a lot of energy, literally, for the brain to learn new pathways. Now, for you to understand how difficult it can be for a brain to learn new pathways, let me put this small test to you and see if you can pass it. Now, say this. Can you say what I'm about to say backwards? I am going to Ethiopia tomorrow. Can you say that backwards? Was that difficult? Oh, that should be a tomorrow Ethiopia to going am I. But it's difficult to say because your brain had created neural pathways to saying things the way you learnt and understood syntax and the way you have been speaking your language. So you get the picture. So my counsel is that you persist in practicing new emotions you are trying to replace an old one with, always on the lookout for situations and opportunities to show your newfound ability to manage your reaction to external stimuli until you convince your brain to accept these new neural pathways as your own new normal. However, my dear friends, as in everything, leave room for occasions when you slip up. Pick yourself up without crucifying yourself and forge right ahead. The last step I want to share with you is keep a journal. I referred to this above, so I'll just dive right into it. Studies show that writing down your emotion helps you have a better understanding of yourself. You know, there is this sort of release when you are feeling boiled over, hot, you are feeling tensed, and you write it. It's like you are talking to your journal. You are releasing tension by journaling. If nothing else, journaling helps you put a timeline to your emotional state per time, creating a sort of tracker or a tracking mechanism for your emotion. Journaling also has a therapeutic advantage. Like I said, it's like a form of release as you are writing it down, as well as you are doing the opposition thinking technique I have taught you in this episode. My dear friends, as I conclude this omnibus episode, let me leave you with this. I charge you to build up a retinue of your preferred emotions you prefer, so that you can control them. Work on regulating the ones you do not like, and as you do so, build up the new set of emotions you would like to rule your life. This way, using the tools I just provided you with, you can now begin to leverage these preferred emotions to become more emotionally intelligent. My friends, if you have enjoyed this podcast, please like this episode and the channel on which you are enjoying it. Thank you. Until the next time I come your way, keep alive, keep safe, and remember, will love you. I am Adewale Adeniji. Bye for now.